Devastating Alabama judge shocks the world. Acid attack on family after night of forbidden lust. In the quiet town of Emerald Springs, where gossip spread like wildfire, an unimaginable horror erupted one fateful night. A respected judge, a man known for his stern but fair demeanor, stood accused of unleashing pure terror on a family that had once been part of his close circle. Residents whispered behind closed doors, their faces painted with disbelief. How could someone so esteemed plunge into a world of chaos, committing an act so horrifying it felt pulled from the darkest corners of a twisted novel? The air thickened with intrigue and fear, and no one was untouched by the searing implications of that single incendiary act and acid attack. They said, a cruel betrayal driven by passion and rage. When the sun dipped below the horizon, the town slick with evening dew, a chilling calm enveloped Emerald Springs. Soft lights flickered inside warm homes, an illusion of safety when, in reality, chaos was brewing just blocks away. That night, shadows deepened, and unexplainable events spiraled into a shocking sequence. Eerie whispers carried through the streets, secrets hidden in plain sight began to unravel. The family once seen as the heart of the community found themselves at the center of a storm brewing from within. The judge's laughter at a local gathering turned to horrifying shouts, echoing down the dimly lit hallways of their shared past, until at last, the desperate cry for help shattered the night. Yet, even amid the chaos, the details felt surreal. A spry little girl, the family's heartbeat, was the first to notice something wasn't right. Her wide eyes darted around the room, sensing the tension, the impending doom that seemed to creep closer with every tick of the clock. And at the same time, a strange missed call flashed on her dad's phone, an unknown number, the kind that usually leaves an unsettling tingle on the back of your neck. What could it mean? As if the very air crackled with a kind of electric premonition, the world held its breath, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. But the real mystery loomed, like a dense fog over the town. Who was really behind the attack? Was it truly the judge, or was there something more sinister lying in wait? As secrets twisted and turned, one name kept popping up, leaving cold shivers in its wake. It seemed that everyone had a part to play in this drama, and the clock was ticking. What would happen when the truth finally emerged from the shadows? The piercing chill of dawn crept into Emerald Springs, illuminating the aftermath left in the wake of last night's horror. The sun's first light, although eager to lift the heaviness, felt too delicate to stay in a place that now lay so bleak, its vibrancy snuffed out by shock and disbelief. Across the town, windows remained unbroken, but shutters were closed. The kind of air that clung to unease filled every corner, as if the very walls sensed the dread simmering just beneath the surface. Inside the family home, the aftermath was raw. The girl, Lucy, stared at her parents, their faces gaunt and drawn. The laughter that once filled their home was replaced by a vacuum of silence. Her mother, once an embodiment of strength, now cradled her head in trembling hands. Her father, usually so reliable and steadfast, paced back and forth, eyes darting with an anxiety that felt tangible, as though it could manifest itself into something wicked at any moment. What was that call? Lucy broke the suffocating silence, her small voice infused with an innocence that cut through the tension, a plea for clarity amid the chaos swirling around her. Her father froze, the question hanging like a weight in the air. With a heavy sigh, he glanced at his phone, the screen shining like a beacon of hope, yet also a source of dread. I don't know, Lucy. I don't know who it could be. The urge to dismiss it rumbling within him battled against the gnawing instinct that urged him to delve deeper. His heart raced as he considered the possibilities. Was it a warning? An acknowledgement from their shadowy pursuer? Questions spiraled in his mind, gnashing against the gnawing worry that suffocated him. Who had it been that even mentioned the name of their tormentor last night? Meanwhile, just a few streets away, whispers spread. Rumors flickered in the minds of Emerald Springs residents like flickering flames. Did they see the judge at the corner bar late last night, neck deep in muffled secrets? Was he truly capable of such a horrific act? Reckless speculation collided with deeply held beliefs, tearing apart the fabric of the community. As dozens of pairs of eyes were drawn toward the Judge South's sprawling estate, they scrutinized every flicker of light, every shadow dancing on the walls, trying to decipher an emblem of guilt or innocence. The gathering crowd murmured, hushed, but palpable angry faces intermingled with fearful ones, as if the very act of absorbing the event had become a dangerous game. Who among them felt beyond reproach? Who had secrets to keep? Driving through the thick fog of gossip and suspicion, the question of why surged like an electric current. Memories of laughter from earlier times clashed with horrifying images that now plagued their minds. As the anxiety escalated, a bead of sweat trickled down Lucy's father's brow. He felt trapped in an unending cycle of uncertainty. In that moment, he realized that unresolved tension lay just beneath the surface of every friendly encounter, every casual wave, and he began to fear for their safety. "Lucy," he said suddenly, grabbing his keys. "We need to get out of here. Now." Lucy's heart raced. "Where do we go?" she asked, her fingers trembling. But he only shook his head, the words lodged in his throat like a piece of shattered glass. He did not want to admit that maybe danger lurked closer than anyone imagined. As he ushered Lucy toward the door, the unknown number flashed again, this time accompanied by a chilling text. It read, "You've only seen the beginning." This ISNT over the hair on Lucy's arm stood on end as she shared in her father's dread. They had invited the storm into their lives, and now it raged both outside and in. The calm that followed the storm was never permanent. A deeper horror lingered just on the fringes. What would come next? Would they confront their haunting past, or would the secrets of Emerald Springs ensnare them in its grip? The door slammed behind them, the sound cracking through the heavy air like thunder. Lucy's heart pounded in her chest as she followed her father, fear twisting in her stomach like a snake. They stepped into the brisk morning air, but the chill did little to cool the fire of dread rising within her. "Where do we go?" she repeated, urgency coloring her voice. Her father's face was taut, pinched like a sheet of paper that had been creased too many times. He looked up and down the street, searching for an answer in every familiar face that now seemed like a mask hiding dark intentions. Just to the diner. "We need to think this through," he finally said, his voice gravelly as he clenched her hand tightly. They dashed down the street, placing distance between them and the lurking shadows of their home. But as they approached the diner, the familiar neon sign flickered weakly in the pale morning light. It was a safe haven, a place filled with warm coffee and friendly faces. But today, as the door swung open, a wave of anxious murmurs rolled toward them like a heavy fog. Eyes darted their way, the usual warmth replaced with an unsettling recognition. "Did you hear?" whispered a waitress, her voice slicing through the atmosphere. "That judge, they say he hurt someone last night." Lucy's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected to find her parents' fears echoing among the townsfolk. The words hung in the air, heavy and portentous. Her father tightened his grip on her hand, his knuckles white. "We can't stay here long," he murmured, guiding Lucy past the stairs, their piercing gazes burrowing into her skin. In a booth at the back, they sat, the corners dark and secluded. This was their refuge, but even here, the walls felt like they were closing in. "What if he comes for us next?" Lucy voiced the question that hung unspoken between them, each syllable draped in fear. Her father's gaze darkened. "He won tea," he said, though the tremor in his voice hinted at uncertainty. "Not if we're careful." But even those words seemed hollow inside the diner. The low hum of conversation faltered, replaced by an oppressive silence that felt unsettling. Lucy glanced around, taking in the anxious looks and the coiled tension. She could sense the town on edge, like a tightly wound spring, ready to snap at a moment's notice. Suddenly, a loud crash broke the stillness. Someone had knocked over a chair. The diner's patrons jumped, eyes wide with shock. In that instant, Lucy caught sight of a figure standing just outside. The judge, the rumor of the hour, loomed in the doorway, the sunlight spilling ominously around him like an ethereal cloak. "Is he?" her father whispered, his voice gone hoarse, unable to finish the thought. Her heart raced at the sight of the man, the gravity of the moment striking her. She wanted to hide, to shrink in size, if only to disappear. But the judge didn't seem to care about her or her father. He appeared transfixed by the diner, scanning the faces as if he were hunting. "Lucy." Her father's voice pulled her attention back from the spiraling panic. "We need to leave. Now." Before they could rise, the air was cut by a loud bang, like a shot. Glass shattered, raining down around them, and a scream echoed through the diner. A surge of chaos erupted as patrons darted for the exits, fear palpable, twisting the space into a frenzy of panic. Lucy clutched her father's arm, terror anchoring her in place until she heard his stern command, "Run." The world became a blur. The judge was still at the door, still searching, but now with an unmistakable fury in his eyes. They bolted, heart racing. Lucy could feel the weight of his gaze on their backs and her breath quickening in rhythm with the pounding of their feet against the floor. But even as they fled, dread whispered that this was far from over. The truth of their escape loomed like a storm cloud, darker and more dangerous than anything they had faced. What would they do when they faced him next? Would their fragile safety hold? Would the judge's wrath finally crush them? They burst through the diner's doors, the clatter of chaos spilling out behind them like a tidal wave. The blaring sirens of approaching police cars pierced the air, a primal scream that sent adrenaline coursing through Lucy's veins. She ran, her shoes pounding against the pavement, legs propelled by sheer terror. An image of the judge's cold eyes flashed in her mind. It felt like a spotlight, chasing her down. "Keep moving," her father shouted, breaking through the fog of her fear. His grip was fierce around her wrist, yet she could sense the same dread coiling inside him. They turned down a narrow alley, their breaths ragged and choppy, the walls closing in like the jaws of a predator. Lucy risked a glance over her shoulder. The diner was a disordered mess behind them, but the judge, he was still there, a dark silhouette against the chaos. The chill in her spine coiled tighter. "Where do we go?" she gasped, feeling a knot of panic tightening her throat. She needed a plan, a place to hide, a way to make sense of the spiraling chaos. "I don't know, just keep running," her father replied, his voice trembling. "We need to find somewhere safe. Somewhere he can't." Suddenly, a loud shout echoed through the alley, followed by the sound of footsteps. Lucy felt a surge of dread as the threat became real. They were no longer just running from fear. They were evading a man capable of unimaginable harm. "Down here." Her father pulled her into a small, dark doorway that led to a basement, the door barely closing behind them before they heard voices approaching. Lucy pressed against the wall, trying to still her breathing, straining to listen. "Did you see him? He headed this way. The old factory's closed." "He wouldn't go there," came another voice, sounding more confident. "But he's desperate. We won't let him slip away." Lucy bit her lip, fighting a wave of nausea. They were right outside, hunting them like animals trapped in a cage. She felt her father tense next to her, both of them immobile as shadows danced through the crack of the half-closed door. "What if they catch us?" Lucy whispered, her heart thumping like a war drum. The fear of the judge and what he represented overwhelmed her. She imagined the stories, the whispers that had swirled around town. It wasn't just about her family anymore. The whole town knew something was wrong. "Shoo," he urged, his eyes darting around the dim space. "We wait. If we can just give it a moment." Lucy felt time stretch, every passing second dragging like a weight on her chest. Her mind flitted back to the diner, the absolute terror on the faces watching them as the glass shattered. That dread was real, palpable. And now, in this darkness, it felt suffocating. Suddenly, a loud crash broke the silence. The door they had entered flung open, the light of the afternoon flooding the basement. She squinted against the brightness, and there stood one of the men from before, a wild look in his eyes. "Found you," he yelled. With a reflexive gasp, Lucy shoved her father back, adrenaline igniting her instincts. They were out of time. "Run," she shouted, and before she could think, they both bolted towards the back of the cellar. The shadows they had just hidden in quickly became a maze. Breathing heavily, Lucy felt her heart race once again as she scanned for an exit, anything that might lead them back to the streets above. Over here, her father called, motioning toward a small window that was barely ajar, but just as they reached it, thunderous footsteps echoed behind them. The hunters were close, and every tortured shout ignited fear into their core. Blind panic surged through her limbs. Would they escape? How far could they run when it felt like the end was so very near? Just as they scrambled through the window, Lucy caught sight of a familiar figure moving swiftly through the alley, someone who could change everything. Wait, she called out just before the world around them erupted into chaos again. Would this stranger be their salvation or their doom? Lucy's breath hitched as she caught sight of the figure, a tall silhouette that drifted closer. The light from the street illuminated the features, revealing a shock of dark hair and intense eyes that narrowed in recognition. Lucy, the figure called out, urgency lacing their voice. What are you doing here, Matthew? She gasped, her heart racing at the sight of her former classmate. They had shared laughter in the hallways, but this was no ordinary reunion. His expression was a mix of confusion and horror as he processed the frantic scene before him, her father, and the chaos surging behind. Get inside, he urged, waving them towards a nearby dumpster that was half hidden behind a row of trash cans. Hurry. Her father grabbed her hand, eyes wide with a mix of hope and skepticism. Is he safe? He whispered. Just trust me, she replied, not wanting to look back at the approaching threat. Matthew ushered them behind the dumpster, where the stench of old food overwhelmed Lucy's senses. They crouched, trying to keep their breaths quiet, limbs pressed tightly together as they listened to the chaos spill over from the alley. Where did they go? One of the hunters shouted, frustrated. It was a voice Lucy recognized from before, the same haunter that had charged into the cellar. Search the area, another voice barked. The tension thickened in the air as Lucy's heart raced in response to the widening gulf of silence and sound. She practically felt the vibrations of approaching footsteps, urgent as they neared their hiding space. Why are they after you? Matthew whispered urgently, a flicker of fear in his eyes. What did you get into? It's complicated. Lucy bit her lip, glancing at her father, who looked desperate to say anything but unable to formulate a coherent thought. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped. Lucy held her breath, the world around her narrowing to that single moment. Then, she barely heard a rustling, skittering sound nearby, then another muttered curse from the hunters. Damn it, why can't we just find them? One of them spat. Closer, too close. The tightness in her chest grew unbearable. She felt her father tense beside her and glanced at Matthew, whose face was ashen. Would they be found? Would they be the next victims of whatever trail the judge had ignited? Lucy, her father's soft voice broke the silence, but it was too late. The dumpster rattled slightly as a figure loomed over them. A flashlight shone onto their hiding place, piercing the shadows like a knife. Check it, one of the hunters commanded, moving closer, his silhouette blocking the light. Panic surged through Lucy. Her instinct was to flee, to pull her father away and sprint toward safety. But they were trapped, the only escape barred by the looming criminal intent of the man above them. Should we shout? Call for help? Matthew whispered, though they all knew there was little hope of anyone hearing in this isolated corner of the alley. Stay quiet, her father hissed, firm yet shaking. The light flickered, illuminating their desperate faces, revealing their fear and the urgent need to escape. Lucy's heart pounded harder, each beat thudding like a timer counting down to disaster. Just as the figure bent down, a sudden clash erupted from a distance, a car door slamming, followed by the sound of multiple voices. Over here, we found a lead. Lucy's heart surged with a mixture of relief and dread. Would they be found? Or was this just another trick in their twisted game of escape and survival? In that fleeting moment of confusion, the hunter straightened, eyes darting toward the new sounds. Let us go, he shouted, retreating into the deeper shadows of the alley, abandoning their search. Breathlessly, they remained crouched behind the dumpster, processing everything. Lucy's heart dropped. What did this mean? Who would come next? Then Matthew's eyes found hers, wide and glimmering with unspoken questions. Lucy, what's the plan? The urgency of those words echoed in her mind, a crack in the wall of uncertainty that could either lead to salvation or doom. Just give me a second, she murmured, staring down the twisting path ahead. And as her mind raced with possibilities, something deep inside told her that whatever lay ahead would not only change their lives, but could unveil a secret darker than any nightfall, the kind that held a town captive. Could they truly escape what was coming? The question swirled as the sounds of chaos faded, but the danger still loomed, heavy in the air. The silence stretched on, thick and heavy like a fog that refused to lift. Lucy's mind raced, her heart hammering against her ribcage as she fought to gather her thoughts. The sense of urgency was like a pulse, thrumming beneath her skin, pushing her to make a move. What is our next step? Matthew pressed, glancing around, both frustrated and fearful. Each second felt like an eternity, a painful reminder that safety was a fragile hope. Lucy closed her eyes momentarily, focusing through the chaos surrounding them. The flickering light from the rodent-infested alley illuminated a scattering of grime, but it was the echo of shouts mixed with footsteps from far away that planted a seed of both dread and resolve in her heart. "We need to move," she whispered as her father nodded, his voice thick with apprehension but containing a hint of determination for her sake. "Where can we go?" he asked, desperation leaking through his tone. "There's nowhere safe." Matthew spoke up, urgency painted across his features. "The old bookstore down the street. It's been closed for a while, but maybe we can hide there until we figure things out." Lucy took a deep breath, fighting against the fear gnawing at her. The thought of the bookstore stirred memories of pages and light, a stark contrast to the dark shadows enveloping them. "Let us go," she urged, her voice steady. They had to act. She peeked out from behind the dumpster, scanning the alley for any signs of danger. The coast seemed clear, but the air crackled with an electric tension, the calm before a storm. "Stay close," she instructed, her grip tightening on her father's hand. With Matthew leading the way, they slipped out from behind the dumpster, hearts racing, minds swirling. They darted down the alleyway, each step echoing like thunder in Lucy's ears. The deserted street stretched ahead, eerily still, as if holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable crash. Suddenly, a loud crash resounded from behind them. Lucy froze, spinning to see a hunting dog, sleek and menacing, bolting towards them, its handler stumbling in the wake. The scent. "They went this way?" The handler's voice pierced the night. "No, keep running," Matthew shouted, urging them forward with a fierce resolve. They sprinted, the adrenaline pumping through their veins, and soon the old bookstore loomed ahead, a dim shadow amidst the streetlights. It appeared lifeless, the cracked windows obscuring a world that almost seemed at peace. "Help me push," Matthew said, gesturing to the heavy door. They shoved against it, the rusted hinges protesting loudly. With one final heave, the door creaked open, revealing a darkened interior filled with the musty smell of forgotten stories. They dove inside, heartbeats thundering in unison. The faint glow from the windows fought against the darkness, revealing dusty shelves crammed with books, their spines cracked and yellowed with age. "Where do we hide?" Lucy whispered, glancing at her father, who appeared frail under the burden of their reality. "Over there," Matthew said, pointing towards a small reading nook obscured by draped cloths. They rushed over and piled behind the furniture, using every ounce of stillness they could muster. The distant sounds of pursuit grew louder. Lucy's heart raced. It was only a matter of time before they were found. She tightened her grip on her father's hand, the fear pooling in her chest. They couldn't let that happen. "What about the judge?" her father murmured, cutting through the gloom. His words hung heavy, a chilling reminder of why they had fled. "Not yet," Lucy said. "First, we find out what happened to Mom. Then we deal with him." But as they waited, a shuffling noise echoed from across the room, sending a chill down Lucy's spine. With a breath caught in her throat, she peered around the corner of the nook, her heart hammering in her chest. What she started to murmur, but at that precise moment, an old tin can clattered to the floor, the sharp sound ricocheting off the walls like gunfire. "Now," Matthew hissed, adrenaline surging as he pulled Lucy and her father closer to us. They held their breath, preparing for the next seconds that would determine their fates. The door of the bookstore swung open with a deafening creak, and a figure stepped inside. Lucy, the voice was low and gravelly, sending a rush of fear down her spine. In that haunting instant, she realized they weren't alone in the darkness. Just who or what had invaded their fragile sanctuary? The question hung heavy as shadows crept closer, and Lucy's world of uncertainty spiraled deeper into chaos. Lucy's breath caught in her throat. The figure standing in the doorway was no stranger, yet the memory of the man was distorted, a haunting echo from the past now transformed into a dark specter. "Is it really you?" she whispered, disbelief twisting in her gut. The figure stepped further into the dimness, allowing a faint flicker of light to illuminate the face that had once been a source of warmth and laughter. Yet now, worn features were layered with shadows, eyes glinting like shards of glass. It was Uncle Brian, or what remained of him after the world had twisted their family apart. "Lucy," he said again, voice heavy with emotion. "You shouldn't be here." "What do you mean?" She shot back, a mix of relief and anger flooding her system. "What are you doing here?" "Looking for you," he replied, voice cracking. Just then, the unmistakable sounds of barking and shouts cut through the air outside, amplifying the reality crashing in on them. "We need to hide," shouted Matthew, urgency driving his words. He grabbed Lucy's arm, pulling her toward the far corner of the room. "No." Uncle Brian moved with surprising speed, cutting them off. "Listen, they're coming. They can't know I'm here. We need to figure this out." The tension turned electric as Lucy's mind raced. "Why shouldn't they know you're here? What are you hiding?" Uncle Brian's gaze darted back toward the door. "It's complicated. You don't understand. I didn't mean for this to happen." Before he could finish, a loud crash echoed from the alley, shaking the walls of the bookstore. The hunting dog's furious barks had turned into frenzied howls, a clear sign they were closing in. "Now is not the moment. We need to." Matthew pressed. Lucy felt her blood chill. "Uncle Brian, please. Tell us what's going on. You can't just leave us in the dark." "No. You have to trust me." His voice was a mix of desperation and authority, drawing a line Lucy didn't want to cross. But how could they trust him after everything? Behind her, her father trembled, eyes wide with fear. "Matthew, we don't have time to argue." Before they could map out a plan, the bookstore door creaked menacingly, causing them all to freeze in place. A pair of boots stomped toward the entrance, the shadows growing bold. Someone was about to enter. "Stay still, don't make a sound," Matthew hissed, ducking low as they pressed into the nook, hearts beating like war drums. The door swung open, revealing a hulking silhouette. A moment hung in the thick air, and then a flashlight beam sliced through the darkness. "I know you're in here. Give up now." Panic crashed over Lucy like a tidal wave. What if they were found? The suffocating grip of anxiety squeezed her chest as she exchanged desperate glances with her father and Matthew, searching for an unspoken plan. Then, Uncle Brian unexpectedly stepped towards the emerging figure, arms raised in surrender. "I'll go with you, Ano." Lucy's voice burst out, instinct pushing her to defend him, to protect what little family they had left. But it was too late. The figure shifted, the flashbeam narrowing in on their hidden corner. "Show yourself." As Lucy felt the ground shift beneath her, a desperate thought ignited in her mind. Could Uncle Brian be saying more than he was letting on? Was he an enemy in disguise? The seconds ticked away, and the air thickened with dread. What secrets did Uncle Brian carry? What truths lurked in the dark, waiting to swallow them whole? And just as the flashlight beam caught a glimpse of fabric from the nook, Matthew's decision to act could either save them or seal their fate. What choice would he make in that instant? Matthew's heart raced as he felt the weight of their lives balancing on a knife's edge. The beam of light danced menacingly, illuminating the dusty shelves of forgotten stories, each haunting shadow reminding him of their fragile situation. He didn't have time to think, only the instinct to survive coursing through his veins. "Run, now," he shouted, abandoning caution in favor of a desperate bid for freedom. Before the shadowy figure had a chance to respond, Matthew lunged forward, pushing Lucy and her father out of the way while bolting toward the back exit. The flashlight beam jerked towards him, revealing a tall man, uniformed with a badge glinting ominously. "Stop!" the officer barked, but Matthew had already reached the back door just before the man could react. With a swift kick, Matthew forced the door open, the hinges squealing in protest. "Get out, go!" he yelled, his voice thick with urgency. Catching up, Lucy grabbed her father's arm, yanking him with her as they spilled into the alleyway, the cool night air wrapping around them like a lifeline. But fear gripped them tight, the barking now more manic, echoing off the brick walls surrounding them. The hunting dog was close, hunting them like prey. "Where's Uncle Brian?" Lucy gasped, turning her head back, her heart sinking. Matthew paused, realizing the looming shadow hadn't he followed. Uncle Brian remained in the bookstore, a sacrifice for their escape. "We can't go back. We need to make it to the car," he insisted, the urgency rattling in his chest like a frantic drum. "Wait." Lucy's voice sliced through his hesitation. "He is our family. We can't just leave him." A wave of conflict coursed through Matthew. His loyalty to his friend collided against the rising panic. "If we turn back, we'll all be caught. Do you think he can protect himself?" Lucy cried, her eyes wide with fear and determination. "He was the one looking out for us." Just then, a distant shout echoed through the alley. "Get them. They went this way." Lucy's blood ran cold. A rush of resolve took over as she clenched her fists. "I'm going back for him. You can stay here if you want, but I don't care. Family matters more than anything." Matthew stared at her, awareness washing over him. "But what if he is not what you think? What if he betrays us?" For a heartbeat, uncertainty consumed her. She felt the walls of the alley closing in, her thoughts crashing against one another. Amidst the chaos, a feral instinct pushed her into action. "I'm going. Stay or come, it's your choice." Without another word, she dashed back towards the bookstore, the door still slightly ajar, revealing a thin sliver of light that beckoned her in. "Lucy, wait," Matthew called out. Yet she was already gone, swallowed by darkness. Uncertainty and bravery intertwined in her every step. Inside the bookstore, Uncle Brian lay face down on the floor, the officer's boot pressing heavily into his back, the glint of handcuffs catching the light. Breath snagged in Lucy's throat as she froze at the sight. "Get off him!" she screamed, heart racing, fists clenched. The figure turned, flashlight beams sweeping over her, the officer's expression morphing into something darker. "You shouldn't have come back." Lucy's pulse quickened. The man was not just an officer, there was something primal in his eyes, an undeniable threat. "Let him go. You don't have to do this." "You think you understand?" he snarled, closing the distance. "You have no idea what's really going on here." Every instinct screamed for her to flee, but instead, she stepped forward, fueled by fierce loyalty. "I want to let you hurt him." In that instant, the tension crystallized in the air. The ground beneath them trembled with impending violence, and Lucy's heartbeat drowned out all other noise. Had she made a grave mistake? What had Uncle Brian done that made this man so desperate to keep them apart? As uncertainty and dread hung over her like a storm cloud, the looming question clung to her thoughts. Would she regret this moment, or would it lead to the truth that could save them all? Lucy's heart pounded in her ears, drowning out everything else. The officer's shadow loomed closer, his breathing heavy and deliberate. The flashlight beam flickered wildly between her and Uncle Brian, casting unsettling shapes across the room. She felt every nerve in her body ignite, a mixture of fear and determination fueling her next move. "Get away from him," she shouted again, voice trembling but unwavering. The officer smirked, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "You don't get to call the shots here. You have no idea what you're getting into." He leaned closer, his breath rancid with aggression. "Family, you think that matters? You've put yourself in danger for a man who's already given up on you." The words sliced through Lucy. She wanted to believe in Uncle Brian's integrity, the stories he told of family bonds guiding them through crises. But doubt crept in, twisting her gut. "Let him go," she cried out, the desperation clawing at her throat that a low growl echoed from the alley outside, the dog's bark mingling with the muffled commands of officers. The realization hit her time was running out. She couldn't stand here arguing. She had to act. Before the officer could respond, she lunged forward, catching him off guard. Her hands grasped for Uncle Brian's arm, yanking him towards her. "Get up," she urged, adrenaline coursing through her, but he remained pinned, the officer's weight holding him down like a heavy anchor. "Lucy, no?" Brian's voice strained as he struggled against the boot pressing into his back. "Please," Lucy shouted, torn between fear for her uncle and the instinct to fight back. She swung her arm, sending a lamp crashing onto the floor, the sound like thunder in the confined space. The officer staggered momentarily, enough for Brian to twist out from beneath him. "Run!" he barked as he scrambled up, determination shining through his disheveled appearance. As they both bolted for the door, Lucy felt the air shift. The officer regained his balance, eyes ablaze with fury. "You'll regret this," he howled, sending a surge of fear coursing through her. They rushed into the cool night air, heartbeats racing as adrenaline lit a fire in their chests. "Quick! This way!" Brian shouted, pulling Lucy down a narrow side street, still teeming with shadows. The barking of the dog intensified, reverberating off the buildings. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness ahead, strong and imposing, their only way out blocked. Lucy's gut twisted as she recognized the face of another officer, the very same one Matthew had been shouting about during their escape. "Don't move," the second officer commanded, voice sharp as a knife. Panic surged through Lucy. "What now?" she gasped, looking back at Uncle Brian, who gripped her arm tightly. Before they could draw a breath, the first officer came crashing out of the bookstore, eyes ablaze with rage and a sinister grin twisting on his lips. "Thought you could run away?" he taunted, stepping closer, encircling them. Lucy's insides churned. The threat of being caught raised the stakes even higher. She cursed the decision to turn back, but couldn't abandon Uncle Brian. The air felt electric, charged with danger. "Uncle Brian, what have you done?" she whispered, fear curling around her heart. Her instinct still screamed for answers, yet all she had was the risk of confronting a truth she didn't understand. In that moment of chaos, two pairs of eyes locked with hers, revealing the battle lines drawn. The darkness around them wove thick with tension, and only one question loomed overhead. Would they fight their way through this impossible situation, or would the fear of their unraveling reality catch up to them first? The moment hung suspended in the air, a ticking clock reminding them that each passing second could be their last. What surprising truth about Uncle Brian would change everything? The air buzzed with tension, thick and heavy. Lucy's heart thudded against her ribcage, each beat edging her closer to the brink of panic. Unseen forces stirred in the shadows, whispering threats that sliced at her resolve. Uncle Brian's presence felt both comforting and terrifying, love tangled with the unknown, a fragile balance that could shatter in an instant. "Get away from him," she shouted once more, her voice cracking with urgency. The two officers exchanged a glance, a silent understanding passing between them like a jolt of electricity. They moved in closer, surrounding her and Uncle Brian with a predatory focus, just like a pack of wolves about to close in on their prey. "It's time for you to face the truth, Lucy," the first officer sneered, his dark eyes glinting with malice. "He is not the man you think he is." Fear gripped her throat as his words threatened to unravel her. She clung to her uncle's arm, searching for his eyes. "Brian, please. What is going on?" The urgency in her voice felt desperate. "I can explain everything," he gasped, breathless and disheveled. "But right now, we have to get out of here." The barking of the hunting dog echoed louder than ever, vibrating the ground beneath them. "They won't stop until they find you." Uncle Brian pressed urgently. "We can't stay here, right?" she breathed, scanning their surroundings. The officers were relentless, closing in with cruel intent. She knew Uncle Brian was hiding something, and uncertainty clouded her mind. But the instinct to survive took precedence over questions. Before she could reflect further, Uncle Brian grabbed her hand and pulled her toward a winding alley, urging her forward with a fierce urgency. "Trust me, Lucy. I promise I'll explain everything later." Adrenaline surged through her, and she nodded, allowing herself to be pulled further into the labyrinth of darkness. Shadows lurked around every corner, a palpable threat still trailing behind them. The officers shouted, their voices cutting through the night, now blaring like sirens in her ears. Just as they turned a corner, Lucy spotted Matthew standing several yards ahead, his eyes wide with a mix of hope and fear. "Lucy," he shouted, relief flooding his voice. "This way." They rushed toward him, hearts pounding in unison. She could see the flicker of fear dance in Matthew's gaze as he glanced back anxiously. "I thought you got caught." Uncle Brian shot a warning look. "We have to move." With one last glance at the approaching enemy officers, Lucy took off, leading the way down the darkened streets as branches of an ancient oak stretched overhead, shading them like a protective canopy. The world outside felt alive, each breath intensifying the wild sense of danger. "Where do we go?" Lucy gasped, urgency coloring her words. "What is the plan?" "Maybe to the old factory," Matthew suggested, his voice trembling slightly. "There might be a way to hide until we can figure this out." "All right," Lucy breathed, still clinging tightly to Uncle Brian's arm, trying to absorb the shock of seeing him again, of the chaos around them. Their hurried steps echoed as they reached the abandoned factory. It was a crumbling relic of the town's past, and the mystery of what lurked within made the air tense. They ducked inside, heartbeats thundering in their chests. Uncle Brian took a moment to catch his breath, tension etched across his features. "I'm so sorry, Lucy. It's complicated. I never meant for you to get involved in all this." "Then explain," she demanded, the fear bubbling over like boiling water on a stove. "Your father didn't just attack that family. He was framed. There are powerful people involved, money's at stake." Dirty dealings. Uncle Brian's eyes locked onto hers, filled with regret, a sadness weighed down by guilt. "Mom," she breathed, the pieces of a painful puzzle beginning to fit together. "Is she?" "Alive. But different," he replied quietly, threading his fingers through his disheveled hair. "You have to understand, I was trying to protect you. We need to clear his name." The weight of his revelation crashed over her. The fear they lived with was rooted in a greater deceit that twisted the very fabric of their lives. "I can't do this without you," Matthew whispered, breaking through a silence that felt alive with fear. "We need to pull together. We're stronger that way." Lucy looked between the two of them, determination rising within her. "Then we find the truth. Together. No more running." They fell silent, a shared resolve building up in the space between them. The chaotic world beyond the factory seemed to fade, making room for an unyielding plan that hummed in their blood. With hearts fortified and minds steadied, they slipped out of the shadows of the old factory, ready to face what awaited them. The road would be fraught with uncertainty, but as long as they stood united, they could tackle the reckoning that loomed beyond the horizon of Emerald Springs. And with a new, fierce bond forged in shared betrayal and resolved to fight for their truth, they knew a glimmer of hope could pierce through the darkest corners of their fight. As they prepared to dive headfirst into the chaos and reclaim their lives, nothing would ever be the same again. This was just the beginning. Now that you've experienced this intense conclusion, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to ensure you don't miss our next exclusive stories that keep you at the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this mind-blowing ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support makes all the difference. Let us keep this amazing community growing.